Hi everybody, in this set of videos we are going to talk a bit more about using the web together with migrated applications and figuring out where does it all come in and out. Now this is going to be a basic overview of the basic wirings that is required to really understand what is going on. It's not a full tutorial, it's not a best practices explanation, it's just some ideas about what's going on. So today modern applications are no longer static HTML pages that you just go back and forth between the server. Today you have usually a browser on which you have like your URL and the HTML tags in it, and you have a server with just all the database and the logic, etc. Now if previously we used to send back and forth pages, now we send back and forth slim HTTP requests that returns just data between the two, and then they interact. It's kind of like there's the front end when you have JavaScript, HTML, and frameworks like Angular, and the back end would usually be a .NET C# server or something like that. So the goal of this set of videos is to cover the basic wiring, the minimum required for these things to run. Now since I'm lazy, as all of you probably already know, I like to learn things fast, and in this case the W3 school has a great tutorial for a technology called Angular. Angular is a technology that was designed by Google to create web applications that are responsive and cool. Very quickly, it brings a lot of power with very little code to write. And although there's a lot of material out there regarding Angular, I found that the W3 school website is really a quick one that you can just start and figure out what's going on. So let's start and figure out what's going on. There's some text here, there's some examples about things that you can do. This is, for example, a very cool example. Let's try it. We can see how I write here Noam, and it responds. You can see that the text here updates according to every update that I'm making over here. Now, the reason that it does that is several things. First of all, we're using the Angular script in our code. Next, we have several special tags. We have here ng model, which basically means that the input is bound to the name, property somewhere, which later we'll see where it comes from, and the double curly brackets, which makes it called Angular, that is an expression within your HTML. Let's go ahead and take this code and put it in a project that we write and see how this works on our machine. So I'll switch over to Visual Studio, and I will add a new project, ASP.NET Web Project. Let's call it Northwind Basic Angular, or just Basic Angular, let's call it like that. We choose an empty project structure with the MVC framework in it. And Visual Studio will create this folder for us. Now in it we're going to create a add new item, an HTML page, and we'll call it orders.html. Later we'll build it to be the orders. And now I have this very basic HTML. And if I make this the startup project and choose that the specific page to be loaded when I run it is orders.html, I will get this nice experience of running it and getting the browser to open. Okay, cool. Here we are. Now, we're using Chrome, and Chrome has some great developer tools that can be activated by this one, and some over there there's a shortcut for developer tools, which I don't remember where, and you click F12 to get it. That's the real quick shortcut to get them. Okay, and I can look at the source and choose the orders.html, and I can see the source and work on it, which is kind of cool. And now to make our life easier and to get this work to be productive, we can bind Chrome to our source code and make our work a lot easier. To do that, all we need to do is go and open our basic demo directory, drag and drop it to the source window. Okay, and he asks for permission, we say yes, and now we can just bind this page to the page that exists in that directory. What this gives us is the ability to edit everything from here. So I can say h1 Noam, and I'll get it to respond. So that's a cool way to start. Now I have some more place to write things, and I can write HTMLs here and refresh it here. Back to Angular. Let's go and get this code sample and put it on our page. So now we've got the same thing working, just in our code. Okay? You can see how it takes the data from the input and on the fly recomputes this part of the text to generate this part of the text. Cool, so this is the first thing to know about Angular. Now I'm going to run with the material here. I'm going to run to angular.scopes, which explains a bit about scope. I can go here and take, let's see what we have here. Let's take this code and put it in our code. And refresh. We see here Volvo. Now what have we got here? We've defined an Angular application, and these two texts need to match. And the controller, which matches this field. That means that the variables that I'm going to address to here actually comes from here, from the scope object. Okay, so let's say Volvo 123, and refresh the page, I'll get Volvo 123. If I want to later add an input ng model equals to car name, and refresh the page, Volvo 123, I can delete it and it will recompute. So by adding this part of the code, we can start writing code out what we want and control it and do cool things with it. Great, we're getting close to things that are more interesting. Let's go and display some data as a list. So further down this scope definition, there is this little piece of code that we're going to take and understand. Here we are. Go back here. So now we've got a list according to the values that we're seeing over here. I can add a value and it will show it to me on the list. Now I can make this list more complicated. I can say that it's a list of orders. And I'll get, again, the same thing is working because I didn't change the data that I want to present. But I can create more complex models, like saying, okay, ID equals 1, and name equals Emil. Notice that we need to use colon instead of equals. ID 2, and name Tobias, and I don't care about the fourth one. Let's save it and refresh. You see we got a complex object over here, and we can do cool things like x.id, and then input ng model x.name. And now I have something that I can edit. Cool. And I can even do another section here doing hi and x.name. And you can see here how with very little HTML and JavaScript we can create a great experience, a great user experience over the browser. And a bit later we'll learn more about how getting the data from the web server. Now another thing I want to show you here is the ability to debug. I can actually place a breakpoint here, refresh the page, and be in debug mode in the studio. And it gives me a lot of cool information, like showing me what does the scope have at this point. I can go here and add to the watch. Let's say that I want to add scope.orders, and I see that it's an array with 2 members in it. And when I open it, we can see 2 objects, ID1 named Emil, and ID2 named Tobias. So this is how the data reaches the JavaScript element that we have here. So this has been a very, very, very crude, basic introduction about what's going on with JavaScript, Angular, and our page. I recommend very much that you go through this tutorial if you want to get a better understanding of what's going on over the web, how to do Angular, how to do those kind of stuff. The Angular scope page will help you a lot with that. Angular W3C is cool. And in the next video, we're going to see how we get this data from a web server, and later we're going to see how we're going to get it from our database and reusing code from the migrated application. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.